Hey, this is Joe from HomeStudioCorner.com. Today I want to talk about fades in Studio One. There are several different ways that you can use fades, and they're really simple and easy to do. As with most things in Studio One, you can do everything with your mouse. So here is a piece of audio. This is actually a mix that I use as intro music for my weekly podcast. And the way I have it set up right now is it plays for the intro, and then when I start speaking, I've got it basically just chopped up into two sections. This one I've brought down in volume, and I've crossfaded between them. Yes, you could do this with automation, but for me, every week on the podcast, I need this in a slightly different spot. So rather than trying to move that with the underlying automation and hoping that it moves with it, which I know it can in Studio One, I like to be able to just see it here, and this actually works really well. So here's what that sounds like coming into that transition there. And then I start speaking right there. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you with fades, we'll get back to that crossfade in just a second, is just a typical fade out, okay? So when you have a region, a piece of audio in Studio One, if you zoom in, if you look at the edge right here, there's this little triangle. So that triangle allows you to click it and drag it to bring in a fade. Now the fade defaults to being pretty linear, which is just a straight line, kind of a linear fade out. That's what you'll end up using, or what I end up using probably 90% of the time. I just, have a piece of audio that a lot of times maybe it's just, the end of a vocal take or something where there's a little noise in between. So I cut it, but if you don't use any fades, there can be that pop in the audio. Listen to this, it might happen. Okay, didn't happen there, but a lot of times it can. And it's just good practice to always have any piece of audio at the beginning and the end to have some sort of fade on it. So if this was literally something like that, I would do a little fade like this, right? Something really short that just keeps it from, covers me from having any pops in my mix that slip through there. Now, if I'm doing some sort of a longer fade where I want to fade out this actual piece so that it's more noticeable over a couple of seconds maybe, then I can drag this out as far as I want to go. What I like about Studio One is the underlying waveform actually changes as we move it. So we can kind of see visually what's about to happen audibly, which you can hear here. So pretty standard, like you were grabbing the fader and moving it down. But what if you wanted to fade it out more slowly or more quickly? Well, that's where dragging this little square right here can help you. If you go like this, it'll fade out much more quickly, and then slowly, slowly fade out towards the end. That's a lot of times for a fade out at the end of a mix, what I'll do. Something like this, if you want it to just stay there and then drop off more quickly at the end, but lose a little bit of volume in here, you can do it that way. So these are different types of logarithmic fade outs as opposed to the straight line, which is a linear fade out. And what's cool is when you get to the straight line, it actually snaps into place, so you don't have to worry about getting it exactly there. So if we do something like this, an exponential fade out, it goes like this. So we can just barely hear it at the end. This one I almost never use, but it's there. Okay, that's just a little different. So for this particular song, let me undo everything I've done up to this point. Okay, I think that may be what I had to begin with. So it's almost like a more linear sounding fade during the first section, and then the last 2/3, it's pretty quiet and slowly fading out at the end. So a good one to use for a song that you're fading out at the end. So it just progressively gets a little bit quieter as you go. Now, I've talked about this when I showed you the simple, quick editing in Studio One, how you do crossfades. You select two pieces of audio and press X, and that creates the crossfade. But we have one here that's already created. And what's interesting about this is we can adjust the crossfade together, where we can raise and lower both of these, but we can also adjust them individually. So if we select this piece of audio, now we're just adjusting that piece of audio's fade. And then this one, we're adjusting that one a little more. Okay, I lied. It doesn't quite work that way. I know we can adjust. Okay, we can adjust it like this to where they kind of overlap at different points. That's what I was thinking about before. So we can kind of cater the fade to whatever needs to happen. If it's something like this where I'm wanting it to slowly fade in volume, we can do that, and then we can adjust the relative volume of each by adjusting this they kind of operate in tandem together to give you kind of the same fade in for one as is the fade out for the other. And that's all by just having it selected and then dragging this. Also, you can click and drag to move the crossfade point in time if that's something you need to do as well. So that's fades and crossfades. The same thing applies to the beginning of files. So if we come to the beginning of this right here, if we wanted to fade this in, same exact thing, drag it out, decide what kind of fade we want, and we're off to the races. Okay, that's fades and crossfades. Good stuff to know how to use. See ya.